Recording. Okay, go ahead.
Welcome to our Academy Hour. We have these once a month, and this time we are privileged to have Dinah and Sonja give us active learning workshop. Okay. For members of the European Academy, the recording will be available on our new website's professional development platform. For those who are not members, you can join in the discussion now, and then if you want to become a member, please let us know. Those who are existing members of the European Academy, if you haven't looked at the new website, I would suggest you do so, and please re-register as a member, otherwise you can't get access to the professional development platform. The European Academy also has a special interest group in education, and we welcome all educators to come and join us. And we will have events either online as a webinar, or we will have it as conference special interest group session as well. My name is Rupala Patel. I'm currently the Vice President for the European Academy. And from end of May, I will take over the presidency. And it is my great pleasure to introduce you to two amazing educators. And I've had the pleasure to work alongside with them 4 years in the Academy. And therefore, it is a joy to see them this evening. And hopefully we have an interesting conversation. I will monitor chat for them in the background. So please do mention things on there, and I will hand over to Dinah and Sonja to introduce themselves.
Okay, thank you, Rupal. So my name, I'm just going to do share screen. So my name is Dinah Paritzky, as you can see up there. I'm speaking to you from Israel. I'm been many, many years in academia in Hadassah College, Hadassah Academic College. And I'm also a fellow of the European Academy. And as Rupal said, I've been on the education committee now for coming up to 2 years. Sonja, do you want to say something?
Hello and good evening. My name is Sonja Zinken. I'm a lecturer at the University of Utrecht, where I teach clinical optometry, binocular vision, and also a lot of the teaching side of things, as I've got also a master's in health professions education. And I've been a fellow since, I think it was 2021, and I'm looking forward to this evening. Thank you, Dinah.
Okay. So I think the first thing we're going to do is a poll. I'm just going to stop share a second, so we can just know who's with us. So Rupal, I hope you're looking at the chat, because I can see there's lots of chats going on. Can you see the chat, Rupal? And let me know if there's anything I need to know. And we're going to just start off with our first poll of the evening. You can see there's 2 questions. The first one is so we can get to know who you are. And are you an optometrist in a private practice, hospital setting, educator, or something else? And also want to know how familiar you are with active learning, where, a scale of 0, nothing at all, to 5, very familiar. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes to answer that. Sonja and Rupal, feel free to join in.
Yeah, I've already chosen the wrong one. I didn't see there was a 5.
Yeah, you have to scroll down. It's
I know.
These are new functions of Zoom, by the way. For those of you who are not so familiar with Zoom, the polls are an old function, but there's a lot of different questions now. This rating scale is a new question. There's also open questions, we'll try later. So Zoom has really got a lot better with the questions on the poll, if that's what you're using. So I can see that most people have answered. I'll just give you a minute or so for anybody else who wants to answer.
Dinah, Sonja and I are Teams user.
Yeah.
So you'll have to, this is learning then. Here we
This
go.
is a learning.
Here we've got some active learning going on. And you can all see the poll, I presume. There's a few people who haven't answered yet. I can see Jose is joining us. So I'm just going to share the results there. Okay, so we've got mostly educators, and we have some optometrists in private practice. Hello, Jose, good evening. We don't seem to have anyone in a hospital setting. And in terms of the active learning, wow, it's a very nice distribution there. We've got no familiarity at all to somewhat. So that's good. We've got something to talk about. So let's get rid of the poll. And I'm going back to share screen. Back to my other screen. There we go. Okay, so we want to talk a bit this evening about understanding the benefits of active learning. We'll go through some examples of active learning and perhaps we'll develop some active learning strategies. Now, some of you may have seen this cone of learning. It's really cool, right? After 2 weeks, if we're doing passive learning, we're just listening or hearing, then we only remember 10%. And if we're doing active learning, or our students are, look how much we remember. And this is from somebody called Dale in 1969. And I really like this cone of learning. There's just one huge problem with it. It's completely not backed up by any evidence whatsoever. It was just intuitive. And I've seen this used in many, many, many places. And when I looked into it, I was like, okay, this is not evidence-based whatsoever. So is there any evidence? And the answer is yes, there is a lot of evidence that active learning works. It really does work, and it's really important. We're talking about retention, we're talking about outcomes. So although this slide is a lot less pretty than this slide is in fact the real thing. So there is definite, and this is just a few examples, there's a lot of research. As optometrists, we tend to look at different kinds of research than this, but as educators, these are the sort of research we're looking at. So what are the benefits of active learning? And again, this is research-based. Develops collaborative skills, encourages risk-taking, it increases the engagement of the students, improves critical thinking, sparks creative thinking, fosters problem-solving skills, and it improves student performance. Now, I added another one, which I think is very, very important. It leads to lifelong learning. For those of us who are educators, I think one of the things we're telling our students is, you're not going to learn everything in the 3 or 4 years you're with me. Your learning is going to have to carry on. So we have to teach our students how to learn as much as how to, get the information we're giving them. So for me, I added the lifelong learning because I think it's a very important benefit of the active learning. So what sorts of active learning do we have? We have collaborative, we have individual, we have things that are easier, we have things that are more complicated. Not sure how much this infographic is useful, so I decided to just do something a little easier to look at. And I put some examples of active learning. The truth is, almost every single thing in the individual column can in fact be done in a group. Role play and simulations have to be done with a group. It's not something to do on your own, as does debate, as does group learning. Pause procedure is something I like to do a lot. We can talk about that in a minute. Peer instruction. And I put in case-based learning and problem-based learning here, although really they could also be individual. So on the individual column, we have case-based learning, problem-based learning, flipped classrooms, student-generated questions, practical work in a theoretical course. Of course, this could easily be group as well as individual, gamification, and population survey. Now, I'm assuming, since when I asked you how much experience you had in active learning, there wasn't that much across the board. So I'm assuming that you'd like to learn more about some of these things. So what we're going to do now, I'm just going to do stop share 1 second because that's easier for me. Let's go back to my Zoom screen. We're just going to do another poll. And we're going to do a poll about active learning. So the first thing is, you need to scroll down here. Which of the following would you like to hear more about? These are things I just mentioned. I didn't put all of them on because I think some were self-explanatory. And at the same time, if you've got other types of active learning that you use that weren't on my list, and you'd like to talk about them or share them, then question 2 is an open question. Again, this is a nice new feature of Zoom. Hasn't been around that long. You can see the poll, yeah? Okay, so if you want to hear more about any of these, then just mark which ones you're interested in. if you're not familiar with them. And if you've got any other types of active learning you'd like to contribute to the discussion, I would love to hear about those. And while you're doing that, could I also ask you to go in the chat and put in your name and email so that we can send you a certificate of attendance. So we're making you keep busy. So I'm just going to give you a minute or so to answer these. Oh, wow. Okay, there's a lot of interest here. That's great. So we're coming up to 2 minutes. I'm just going to give you another few seconds. And then we'll carry on. So I've given you 2 full minutes, right? So end poll, and let's look at the results. So pretty much everything apart from peer instruction we need to look at. So we'll have a look at that in a minute. And what types of AL do you use? I'm not sure if you can see my screen at the moment. Flipped classroom, case learning, 4-step approach. Have used debates, interactive webinars, workshops. So the modified Peyton's 4-step approach is something we're going to talk about in a minute. I mean, we'll have to find my Zoom again. Okay, so I'm just going to stop sharing over there. And I'm just going to go very briefly through the things people wanted to talk about. So I'm just looking at my list. Role play and simulations. Sonja, feel free to jump in at some point before my voice goes. This is I teach a course called Introduction to Patient Care, and this is before the students are in clinics, and each week we give the students a virtual patient that they have to do a role play for the rest of the students in the group. One student is the patient, one student is the optometrist, and it gets them into the habit of how to ask questions, how to communicate with a patient, how to tell them at the end of the examination what the results are, how to deal with a patient who's arguing with them. So that's an example of role play or simulation, that the students are pretending to be patients before they actually have real patient encounters. Pause procedure. Okay, that was a 40% wanted to know about that. I love doing this. When I'm teaching a lecture, and I've got 60 students in a class, after I've taught one topic, and hopefully a small topic, I'll stop for a pause, and the students are used to this. They have 2-3 minutes in pairs to ask each other questions about what we've just learned. Now, if they know the answer, that's fine, and then they're testing the other one. And if they don't know the answer and neither one of them knows the answer, then when they get back, they'll ask me. Now, that stops them whispering to each other while I'm explaining things, because they know they're going to get the chance to do that. So I actually find that really, really helpful. And also it gives them the confidence that it's not just them who didn't understand if they didn't understand. So pause procedure is just every few minutes, stopping for 30 seconds for a minute, let the students interact, let them explain or ask each other, and then we come back. Case-based learning. To me, that works hand in hand with the simulations. We've made up a whole lot of virtual patients and we give them to the students. They have to analyze the record card and they have to come up with a plan. We'll give them a fake examination, and this is based on a case. They have to come up with a plan of what they're going to do with that patient. Flipped classroom. Instead of getting together with all the students and giving them the information, they get the information before you come together. It might be, might do some recordings, give them some reading. It's like an asynchronous lesson. And then when we come together, instead of me standing up talking to them, there might be discussion groups. They might have some kind of exercise to do. Practical work in a theoretical course. I like this. I like getting them to do things. So for instance, when I teach astigmatism, I get them to bring toilet paper rolls and then just cut out circles, and then they can feel that it's a plan, because sometimes you get the concept of a plano cylinder, it's quite hard to think of. But when they're actually holding this cut out circle from a toilet roll, I'm like, okay, hold the axis at 90, hold the axis at 180. That's just one example. When I teach visual optics and I'm showing complicated diagrams, I'll give them a template and they have to make the diagram. Now, you think it's easy enough if they're just copying from the board, but when they get the ray tracing wrong, you realize they haven't really understood if it's convergence or divergence. So anything I can do to get them moving and doing things rather than just listening, to me, is practical work. The last two that people wanted to talk about, gamification. There's some very cool digital tools online for free that you can use to make games, or you can get the students to make games. For instance, I can't remember the name of it right now, flip cards that the students, you can put a picture from the slit lamp on one side, on the other side say what it is. And then the other students can play it, you know, did they guess right? I've completely lost the name of the game right now. But gamification is a very, you know, if you do Kahoot, that's gamification as well. And that can be active learning. But there's some very, very nice digital tools out there to actually make games. The last one, population survey. I like to do this with my first year students. Every time we learn about a new type of refractive error, you know, learning myopia or hyperopia or amblyopia, I get them to go and interview people who have myopia. You know, from what age did you start wearing the glasses? Do you wear them full time? And it gives them a sense of it. You know, so then they start realizing, okay, if I'm a -5, I'm pretty much going to wear them all time. If I'm only an 075, I might just wear them for distance. Now, I've been telling them that, but when they come and hear it themselves and write it down, and then we all get together and we do a woo clap. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's a digital tool where everyone can put in their results, and we can look at the survey of the whole class and get some understanding from that. So that's some things that I do in active learning. And I asked if you people had different things. Does the person who answered about the Peyton 4-step want to share that with us? I just see guests. I don't see who it is. Okay, Sonja, do you want to talk about any ones that I might have missed? Any of your favorites?
Just going to go unmute. Thank you. One that I would like to add is problem-based learning. With problem-based learning, people think that it is quite a big thing that you need to do as a complete university degree. But with problem-based learning, what I used today, for example, I just gave them a sentence which covered a certain subject. And instead of me talking about the subject, I asked them, in using the 7-step method, to investigate it. So first of all, they look at, you know, there's strange words in there. Do I actually know them? So they can ask in small groups, because maybe their friends know more about that difficult subject. And then they have to look up the problem, because it could be, in this case, it was a didactics course I was doing, but you can also say, you know, you've got a patient with glaucoma who doesn't want to use any drops. I can talk for hours about glaucoma, but then it's just me sending, and it's much better if students start to look on the internet and think, is this going to answer the question? And the other thing is that they teach each other, because every little group comes up with some theory and they explain it to each other. In that way, you're also, again, using your own knowledge. And so problem-based learning can also be used as just a little task for one lecture, and that's what I like about active learning. That is, you know, it's so many things you can do to make them use the knowledge. And we all know when students use the knowledge, that's actually when it stays.
Thank
Dinah,
you.
can we
Rebecca
unmute?
wrote, sorry, didn't find the unmute. Does that mean Rebecca wanted to share the Peyton's 4-step with us?
Yes. So can you unmute her? Because I think if she can't unmute, but you as host can unmute her.
I'm asking her to unmute.
Yes,
Yes.
there we go. Okay, hello. Sorry about that. We couldn't find the unmute button. So I'm with Rebecca, I'm Kate, and we've been using a modified Peyton's 4-step approach. So Peyton's four-step approach is widely used in medical education for training clinical skills. But it's a one-to-one technique where you demonstrate the skill, you get the student to explain the skill, and then the student performs the skill. So we've tried a modified technique, so it's more like 1 to 4 or 5. It's a small group technique. And we've been using it for aplanation tonometry. So we find our optometry students are a little bit nervous about performing tonometry on each other, aplanation tonometry on each other, worried about scratching the cornea and causing damage to each other. Excuse me. So in this technique, as the instructor, you demonstrate the technique without saying anything. You just perform the technique and show them what to do. You then demonstrate the technique, explaining what you're doing, giving instructions. And then you get the first student in the group to instruct you as the instructor doing the technique. So they've got that cognitive step of explaining the procedure, and then they get to have a turn. So student 1 will have a turn while student 2 explains what they should do. And then everybody in the group gives feedback. And then student 2 has a turn and student 3 explains what to do, and everybody gives feedback, and so on until everybody's had a turn at observing, instructing and performing the technique. And we've found it really effective in engaging our students and getting them to observe each other and concentrate and focus. So it's just something we've been trying out and found really, really useful.
That's terrific. Thank you so much for sharing that. I just made notes. I'm going to tell my lab people about that. That's great. Thank you.
So Dinah, use something similar for our clinical assessments or OSCEs or practical stations. So before they get the real ones, we give them some fake ones where they work in 3. So one's an examiner, one's a patient, and they move around. And it increases assessment literacy because they get used to marking and giving feedback and then understand the process of what a station exam looks like from everyone's viewpoint as well. So it gives you 2 things in terms of it gives them a mock exam because they like mock exams. It also increases their understanding of how the assessment would work.
Great, thank you. So Sonja, over to you for the share screen.
Let's see if it works. As I said, I'm more a Teams person. Yeah, let's have a look. There we go to the share screen. That's to share. So you should be able to, excellent.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank
So
you.
I'm going to go a step further now because we've been talking about the active learning within a university. But a lot of our students are also working outside of the university. So how are we actually going to do that and to a certain extent also market? And what we're doing in the Netherlands, we're using the programmatic assessment paradigm. So how does that work? I'm just going to show you this little picture. Look at this little road, the road the student has to take from year 1 up until year 4. So the finishing line is year 4. And overall those 4 years, students, they've got exams, they've got assignments, they've got practical sessions, they've got clinics. And at one point, they're actually entering the real world. Now, what is really important in the old days, we used to say, okay, you've got 5 out of 10. So you've passed or you didn't pass, maybe you need to have 55%. But there's one thing that we didn't think about. If you have 55%, that also means that there's 45% you don't know yet. And with programmatic assessment, we're actually going to look at first what you already know, and second, what you don't know. And instead of giving a mark, we are looking at the learning outcome. And a learning outcome, most people know it also as the competency. So the competencies that an optometrist needs to know by the time they're finishing their degree. So my students, when I explain to them what they know, I'm also going to talk about what they don't know. And that's the part where you can see this little person here. She's actually trying to get some proof. So we're using different methods. For example, in the practical workplace, it can be assignments. They have to write cases, but it can also be feedback they're receiving from their workplace-based lecturer, supervisor. It doesn't need to be a lecturer, it can be a supervisor as well. And all these together, they are actually explaining that the student has passed. The dialogue students have with their supervisor, but also with fellow students, it's really important. They're writing this down. And we're starting now an e-portfolio. So if a student has a dialogue, has some peer feedback or feedback from a supervisor, they can then add that in the portfolio. But you can also use a normal portfolio. It doesn't need to be an e-portfolio. And at one point, the student will actually say to us, you know, I've had so much feedback on my work, there's saturation. I think I'm well enough to pass. Now we say thank you very much, and we're going to talk to the professionals, which can be lecturers, but also the people of the workplace. So what do you think of this student? And all these parts together will actually help us to judge whether the student can have at the end their competency base, whether they've got the diploma. And the huge advantage of this is that we all know when we had 55%, it's like, okay, finally, I managed this exam, I won't have to look at it. But because we do it the other way around, they have to prove to us that they actually are fit to practice. Students are going to be extremely active in finding ways to prove that they are really good optometrists. And that is the advantage of this system. The other thing is that the student is in the lead, and Dinah has already explained it. In the future, once you are a qualified optometrist, you have to look at your own skills. You have to judge, are you still fit to practice? And that is what we are actually teaching the students here. This is part of that lifelong learning. They have to be critical, and they have to look critical at what they can and what they can't do. And it works wonders. It's very difficult at the start because, of course, we've got a lot of students that are still used to the old system, and now they have to go into the programmatic assessment. So what you see is that with the fourth-year students, we actually have to give them a little bit more help than that we would suppose in 4 or 5 years' time, when students are much more used to this system. So it is a complete different way of thinking. It's difficult for us lecturers as well, and even, you know, I'm a medical educationist, and I'm sometimes like, oh, but how do I cover the knowledge? Now we've got an example for that as well, that if you look at it, for example, the student needs to see a patient with glaucoma. Just think about all the steps that we're doing as an optometrist. First of all, we have to take a history. We need to have knowledge, because that knowledge determines whether we're changing that history into differential diagnosis. We need to think about the right way of assessing the patient. Are we going to do a visual field? Which visual field? Do we need to look inside of the eye? Yes or no? What is it I'm seeing? What is the CD ratio? And then in the end, we have to decide, is it glaucoma or not? And if it is glaucoma, what are the next steps? So there's a lot of little things that students need to do. And by looking at it from a complete package, so the patient with glaucoma, we can give much better feedback on what the student has to look at. And it's a system that has been used in medical schools for quite a while, I think about 10 years at least. And you'll see it changing the way we're teaching in the Netherlands with, for example, optometry, orthoptics, but also in nursing. And I'm hoping, of course, that more optometry universities are going to take over, because it really helps students to steer away from just reading books. They're really working towards becoming an optometrist. That also helps motivation, which active learning is one of the other things, is motivating them to do things and to become a better optometrist. I can talk for hours about this, about programmatic assessment, and I'm hoping that I can do another lecture on just programmatic assessment. But I think for now, it is important that we just have a little bit of an overview about what is active learning. So the next thing that we're going to do is that we're all going to experience active learning through the breakout rooms. Dinah, you're now in charge again.
Right, so I'm going to split you randomly into breakout rooms, and you're going to have just a few minutes to work together to answer this question. What current spectacles can be used for myopia management or myopia control, and do they work? So we're going to give you about we'll give you four or 5 minutes. I'm going to split you into breakout rooms. You can introduce yourselves, of course, when you're there. And we're going to do that now. And I'll give you 5 minutes to do some active learning in your teams, in your breakout rooms. For those of you who are not familiar with Zoom, you'll see an option of going into a room, just accept, and then you can work on this question. Remember the question is, which current spectacles can be used for myopia management, and do they in fact work? So, join the rooms that I've just opened for you, and you can get going. Rupal and Sonja, you're in a group. You're in a room with an AI. Rebecca, Jen, Jose, you're going into your room? Yeah, into room 2. Rebecca, going into room 2? Jose, you there? Okay, so welcome back, everybody. It looked like you were having some very lively discussions there when I popped into the rooms. I'm interested to know if you used any tools to find the answers rather than just talking. Did you go online? Did you use any specific tools to find the answers? Or did you just talk? Well, the group who had Mark obviously had a big advantage here because he's an expert in this. But apart from talking, did anybody go online and look things up? Nobody? Kyriakos?
Didn't have any time for using any tool,
So you just
but
talk.
my comments is that active learning must not be boring.
True.
Okay. Was it boring?
No, just
It was fun. It was fun meeting people in the breakout rooms. Mark, so you didn't go online and look anything up?
No, I have it all up here.
Well, you do have it all up there. That's a really unfair advantage, the group who was with
But I waited in the weeds and let everybody else sort of talk, and they generally already had fairly informed opinions. But
okay, I'm just what if you want to make it more evidence-based, where would you have gone? Would you have gone to PubMed? Would you have gone to Google, or would you have gone to any AI tool? Are you familiar with AIs?
Yeah. So the problem with AI is it's garbage in, garbage out. So if there is misinformation out there on the internet, then AI will find it. So if you read the paper that came out of Aston on AI tools and myopia, you know, the AI didn't score very high in some areas, or it was average to good, but that was, in my mind, because the information's not particularly good out there. You know, in terms of something like this, going to the Cochrane database where there's systematic reviews, or finding other scholarly peer-reviewed data on it is so going to PubMed or Scopus or Clavariate, whatever it's called, you know, using the conventional academic methods is quite useful for something like this.
That's because you don't trust AI to do it for you. But if AI progresses enough that it could go through all these articles in the blink of an eye and come back at you with the results, you don't think we're getting there?
It's getting better.
It is getting better. It's getting
yeah.
a lot better.
But as I said, you know, it depends on what you ask it to access.
Right.
So if you're just asking it a question, like, you know, ChatGPT, it'll give you what it finds anywhere. But you can be more specific. And you know, I'm shocked at how good the AI tools are. I've got a free version of one that you might have seen pop up in the message store, which just really transcribes the
yeah, we saw that.
but the one on Zoom is really good at summarizing discussions on a Zoom call. So so that's, yeah, so
Nice. Well, we do want to talk more about AI, but we're going to go over to Sonja to finish her presentation. And for those of you who get anybody,
I like the fact that
we do a
people
quick promo here, Sonja. Sonja and I are doing a workshop
yes.
in using AI. We're going to do a workshop in Helsinki in the EAO conference. So if anybody wants to come along and see us at our workshop, that would be great. Sonja, over to you to finish off with your presentation.
I like the fact that people are still chatting about what we asked, and I think that is just so brilliant that it really activates people. So I'm just going to share this last slide with you all, and you know, we've already seen. That I've got now for all of us, so that we can use the last 15 minutes, is what can you or would you like to implement in your own situation to improve active learning using the principles explained? And I think it's important to know why I'm asking this question, because from last year at the European Academy Conference, we had a lot of universities that would like to introduce things. However, it was a bit difficult to start new things, and it's always as when you're a lecturer and you're hearing things on from other lecturers or other educationalists, it's sometimes difficult to explain that in your own situation and convince people that it is important. So I would like to ask you what you would like to implement and whether you actually are seeing any problems that occur in your own country or your own university, and we can maybe give you advice on how to implement it in your own situation. So I can unshare now, actually, because we can see each other better. So the question is like, what would you like to use at your own institute or at your own workplace? What we might just see some problems occurring.
I just want to add to that. One of the things we like to do is get together with different members of faculty, and sometimes from different faculties who teach in completely different disciplines, and just brainstorm. I mean, I've been doing active learning for a while, but sometimes I come up against a subject like, what sort of active learning can I do that'll be interesting? Because the one thing I don't want to do is use the same model of active learning every week. Like Chris Kyriakos said, it has to be interesting and not boring. And I use a tool called WooClap, which is interactive. It's great, but if that's all I do, then it's boring. So I like to be very creative. And I like to hear from other people. Like I've come up against a subject which is maybe not so exciting, what would you do with active learning for that? And I like to hear ideas from other people and adapt them. So that's really what we'd like to do now. Either to say, ask for ideas, or to give ideas that you've used, which you think are really cool.
It's a nice example you're giving about WooClap, because I've noticed the other side of the story as well, that if you use too much active learning, so if you have 2-hour lectures and you're just using everything you can find on WooClap, the students are getting overloaded with the methods, and sometimes it's okay to actually have a rest point again.
I was going to say I would try and use gamification in some of the didactic lectures, and it's competition by using polls like you've used a poll here. So they can call themselves names, they give themselves in Mentimeters, you can then see where you are. So you've given yourself a name, and compared to the rest of your class, you see where your knowledge is. So it helps them self-assess their progress as well.
Yeah. And it helps you as well if you use the Kahoots. I just can't remember. I've got another one, and it actually shows me what the students have answered. And then if I notice that there's that question that they all did wrong, then I know that that's actually a subject I have to explain again.
Students love Kahoot, absolutely love it. Is everybody familiar with Kahoot?
Do you use it with or without the sound? Because I find the sound really disturbing.
It's horrible. I hate that annoying music. I turn the volume all the way down as well.
Yeah, I turn it off, but then I've got colleagues who are in the office below, in the classroom below me, play the music out loud. So you're in the office and you're like, okay, it must be quiz time because you can hear music.
Yeah, what I do encourage my students to do with Kahoot is to use nicknames and not their real name. And then I find the ones who are nervous and shy, well, they don't mind answering because they know that they can see they're anonymous. They can see I don't know who they are.
Yeah, I do that as well.
Yeah. Somebody you might want to reach out to in the US who does a lot of this stuff and is incredibly good at it is John Mark Jackson at the Southern College of Optometry in Memphis. I've seen him give educational seminars on this, and he's incredibly creative and proactive in this. My own experience has been fairly limited when I was teaching first-year optics, but I embraced the online platforms that sort of came online about 20 years ago, where you could, set questions, and I embraced that for optics because there was a calculation sort of mode, so you could set problem sets for students that would then get graded automatically. But the real sort of aha moment was when I realized that I could give them multiple attempts at a given set of problems. Numbers would change every time, and that their best score would count for their grade. And of course, the students embraced that because they would, so we would frequently, the average score would be 97%. But it was a win-win situation because they were getting good scores, but I was encouraging them to stay up to date and do an active learning process, which led to better mastery ultimately. If you're a colleague, I assume all universities have access to those sort of Blackboard, Canvas, whatever they call them. If you're not using it for optics, you're missing an opportunity. So I used it for first-year optics and then ophthalmic lenses as well, which is not quite so easy, but a lot of the content. And you could use it for contact lenses and refraction.
Can you write the name of the program in the chat?
Say again?
Could you write the name of the program that you use in the chat, or send it me by email if you don't remember?
Yeah, I went through a variety of it. We use WebCT, we use Canvas, I think it was. I'm going to spell it wrong. I think Blackboard is another one.
Yeah, Blackboard and Canvas, and Moodle. You've got Moodle as well.
Yeah.
Moodle is another one, yeah. So those are all things, and if you're part of a large university, then typically they have a site license for it, and they probably have a techie who can help set you up. But if anybody wants to explore it further, just reach out to me and I can look through my memory banks and see what I have. But it's you know, as I said, it's a missed opportunity if you have access to it. You know, I didn't find it useful to sort of, you know, ask sort of short answer questions or whatever, but for optics, it was just a great fit.
Absolutely. I just want to say, if you're not doing any active learning, or perhaps your college or university isn't, there is a certain amount of resistance on the side of the students when you start, because the students prefer to be passive. It's much easier to just sit there, even if it's not the best thing. So one of the things I do with the students is I show them similar slides to what I showed you. I show them the why I'm doing the active learning. But now, since in my college it's become a requirement in every single course across the board, there's a lot less resistance because they know what they're coming into. They know they're going to have to work throughout the semester. They know they're going to have to get a passing grade for that semester to be able to even sit the exam. So once it becomes the culture of the educational framework that you're in, it's much, much, much easier. Every student is now coming into every course at the beginning of the year, knowing and expecting they're going to get active learning. And I think that fun active learning is as valuable as not fun active learning. So why not make it fun? If we have a couple of minutes at the end, Sonja, I'd like to show you something my students did. They had a terrific time doing.
But this is the same with the programmatic assessment as well, because the students have to suddenly be active and trying to convince us that they've actually passed everything. And the other thing is that understanding feedback is really difficult, because we all know, if my colleague tells me that, oh, Sonja, you could do that way, if I have a bad day, is it feedback? Do I receive it as feedback, or do I see it as being critical? So it's the other thing that I think with the new learning that we're doing now, we have to explain the students very much why we're doing it, what the idea behind it is. Because otherwise they're like, oh, we still have to do all these things. And it is the fun part of it, and also make them explain to them that helps them learning. Now, I still get so many students that they're like, oh, the learning is so difficult. And if you then ask them, so what are you actually doing at home? Well, I'm reading and I'm using these yellow markers. And you think, oh, those poor child, you know, that's a horrible way of studying. So it works through everything. Yeah? If you just do something with the learning, if you come up with other ideas, make your own quizzes, that helps you in learning as well. And there's still a lot of work to be done, but I'm finding it really interesting. It makes our work more interesting as well. I don't know if there's anybody else who would like to share their ideas, or maybe the challenges that that have occurred at their own institute, or maybe, you know, I was talking about workplace-based learning, the challenges that you've received there. Do you think, you know, how am I actually getting the student to work?
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
The university that I'm at now got rid of the straight desk classroom setting, and they're all now round tables.
Oh, nice.
That's
So
lovely.
you have to do kind of group work or active learning. There is no sitting in front of the lecturer just stands and delivers. They took the initiative and all classrooms were redesigned, and that is the way forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I did a huge active learning yesterday. I had 55 students in pairs simulating symptoms so they could ask questions about the symptom. And I was trying to walk around to help them out, but I ended up like climbing over the chairs to get to them because the physical layout wasn't suitable. But they really threw themselves into it. And it was really great to see so many people in one go doing this active learning. If you don't, Sonny, is it okay if I just share something my students did? One of the courses I teach is visual optics, which is perhaps not the most fun course in the world because it's basically physics of the eye. So can you see my screen? Hang on a second. Why is that gone like that? You can see my screen, yeah?
Oh, wow.
Wait a second, let's just see it. Fun. I got them to actually, this is an example of doing something physical in a theoretical course. I said, build an eye, think about the different refractive indexes, and you can see they got very creative. And I can honestly say this is the only assignment I gave the entire semester that every single person handed in on time. And they were just
How long was the time for them to make this? Was it like a week or?
I think it was a few days, but they did this with a 3D printer, that one. That was done with a 3D printer. Look at that one. How creative is that?
That's
I love
amazing.
that.
Yes.
And gummy bear. And they were and it was towards the end of the semester when everyone's like a little bit dragging and the exams are coming up. And this really woke them up and they just got so excited about it. And you can see how they were just incredibly, incredibly creative with what they were doing. And I really think this is something they're going to really remember. Look at that. Is that
Oh,
beautiful?
they are. They're going to remember this, definitely.
And, you take a course like visual optics, which is, dry physics, and you can make something fun with it. That I think that's really what, as an educator, that's the most we can hope for.
That's amazing. Some of the things were like, what have they used?
Did you see the toilet paper one?
Yeah, that was a good one.
The food
It's
was
like
a popular
pizza or
one.
something, isn't food?
That was it. That's we're done.
Oh, that's a really good one, yes.
So I catch the idea. I will open a gourmet restaurant, The Eye.
Yes.
Karaoke, it has to be different refractive indices in your food
Of
that you
course.
sell. Your starters have to be a different index. The main desserts have to change and get more dense as it goes
Correct.
through.
Okay, so time to wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us. Sonja, do you want to say any?
No, I would like to say thank you to everybody as well. And I'm looking forward to our next meeting, of course, in Helsinki. And I'm hoping to see a lot of people. And of course, when you are in Helsinki, also ask us about everything you want to know about education and changing your own education. We both, I think I can speak for you as well, Dinah. We love to teach and we really like to share our thoughts and ideas about how to implement new ways of studying to students.
Thank you, Dinah and Sonja. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Our next Academy Hour there's a second one this month, the 22nd, I think, of February, which is about our European diploma alumni and the European diploma process. So across Europe, we try and standardize the optometry qualification. There is European diploma. So we're talking to alumni, and we're going to look at any other universities who are interested in how they can become awarders of European diploma. March time, I think it's vision and driving, if I remember correctly. I haven't got my sign on it. But the next education special interest group event is in Helsinki, the conference. We have a workshop on Friday morning with Dinah and Sonja on use of artificial intelligence in learning, teaching, and assessment. So we look forward to that. There is a lot of other AI in that conference because it's about technology in shared care. So there is the application of AI in clinical practice as well. So it's a technology heavy conference, which hopefully we can share. If you can't travel to Helsinki, there is an option for joining the conference online. The workshops are not online, but the lectures and presentations will be online option as well. So if you think it's too long to fly out to Helsinki, that is an option as well. So we're trying to do a hybrid version. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to Mark's note-taking. Hopefully the note-taking is as good as the minutes that we produce as well. And for those who are members, the recording of this will be available on the website. Thank you. And
Thank you.
Christina will send you certificates very soon.